Domino on this live. The last time we were doing the live stream, we were working with the Festool doing panels for this shop cart that I'm working on. Now, the idea of these shop carts, I've been doing a lot of shop projects to build things that I need in the shop for the past several months, and it's been a great journey because here's the thing: if you're thinking about shop projects, I encourage you to think about them in a way where you can explore the techniques that you're going to be using to make your own woodworking projects in the future, right? A lot of people will take the attitude that, oh, shop projects are not very important. They're just kind of like throwaway kind of stuff. And they kind of build them haphazardly. They don't use nice materials. They don't really take too much time to even think about them. For me, I wanted to have even though I'm in a garage and even though the garage is hella messy, I wanted to have a place where we could do hopefully nice work and have a nice aesthetic to it. So everything has been following a design language that I've been developing over the time, and it just kind of comes together. It's not something that before I started, that I set out and said this is how it's going to be. It just kind of evolved, and it just kind of follows along. And I've used these different shop projects to use different techniques in joinery, in finishing, different types of finishes and things like that, just to get a feel for the different things that are out there, so that I can hopefully hone skills while making shop projects, so that when I come to making the actual projects that I want to make, I won't muck them up as badly. So one of those is I got a bandsaw. This is the Delta Shopmaster 9-inch, and it's a very basic, simple bandsaw. It's small. It's got a little, maybe 4-inch clearance here, 9 inches across on the opening. For the most part, it does everything that I need. And what I wanted some way to keep everything modular and mobile around the shop. So I wanted to have a way to build a cart for it that I can roll in and out and put it away. So as you can see here, this right now is its home position. It just sits here until I need it, and then I roll it out and use it. Connect it to dust collection, and then utilize the bandsaw. And then when I'm finished, clean it up and then put it back away, and that's where it lives. There's a lot of mess around here because we've got multiple projects going on. Now, if you look at this cart, you'll see that the cart itself is just made of plywood. And the thing about this is that I'm utilizing plywood that I'm harvesting from different locations. Meaning that the plywood that I'm using is actually harvested. I'm harvesting the plywood from like the panels on this cart came from my friend's workshop. He had these big 8 foot by 4 foot, 3/4 inch plywood sheets sitting outside of his workshop in the rain, in the weather, for about a year. And I said to him, "What are you doing with those?" He's like, "Nothing, man." He's like, "You want them?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll take them," because I wanted to do these shop projects. So what I did is I took them out. I didn't, like in the last video, I basically sanded them down to remove the surface wear, and I created, these panels. I cut these panels out as a cart. And what I was doing is I was trying to figure out, okay, so in this particular cart I designed originally, let me bring it closer. This piece here is what's connected to the bandsaw. The bandsaw is bolted to this plate, and this plate is held in place by clamps. The idea was that I was going to keep these smaller benchtop tools on a separate rack, and then just move them here to work on them and move them around, which is a great idea. And I even created the 20 millimeter by 96 millimeter dog holes, so that I could use those type of dog holes that will interlock with the main panel here. That just kind of got to be expensive. If you go to TSO Products and you want to buy those kind of those 20 millimeter through bench dog things, it gets to be quite expensive. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe just to keep one locked in was not really worth the the money, especially when you go to Home Depot. When you go to Harbor Freight, and you can pick up these F-style, let me get this out. These F-style clamps here for only $4 or $5, whatever it is, and they will hold it stable enough. So in this particular case, I measured out, of course, you know that I like Festool stuff, so I've got a bunch of Festool, and I wanted to create a system where I could utilize the Festool sliders, or they have these sys rails, and the sys rails look like this, right? So you can see here the sys rails are these rails that you just kind of keep your sustainers in. And when you use this sys rails, you must have a width of 418 millimeters from the inside walls. And so that's what I was doing here is I created a cart that on both sides has the proper depth of 418 millimeters. So if I wanted to put the rails in, that would be perfect. Now this particular cabinet or cart is 620 millimeters deep, which matches the 24-inch depth of the kind of main workbench here, just the worktop. And that's kind of the idea behind this, is that it would be rolling and being able to do its thing. And because I wasn't really thinking that it needed to be heavy duty, I basically just used these cheaper skate style wheels from Harbor Freight. These are like $3 each. They're locking. They're not the greatest. When it comes to locking down your wheel, it's kind of cantankerous. It's a little bit harsh. It's not very good, but I don't really need it to be locked down very often. And I don't need it to do much more than roll around a little bit. So it's not critical. On some of the other benches and carts that I've made since that time, stuff that I'm going to be using a lot more, like the bandsaw I don't use that much, so I don't really roll around, but let's say like this auxiliary bench here, I'm using these 2.5-inch double locking casters from Wood River. These are about $12 a caster, so it's a little bit more expensive, but the quality of the caster is much superior to the ones from Harbor Freight. And Harbor Freight also does not offer double locking casters. And what double locking casters means is that when you lock down the caster, right, let me put this back on here so that I can show you. Whoa. You know, we're not really planning these too well out. Like, I don't have camera people or anything like that. So, all right, we've got a double locking caster. This is the Wood River double locking 2.5-inch caster, about $12 or $13 from Woodcraft. A very nice quality heavy metal. I'm using this on the cart there. No, I'm using this. What am I using this for? I'm building something else. Let me grab the other one. Oh, I'm using this on my new bandsaw cart. That's what it's for, which is what I'm sitting on right now. This is the bandsaw box that houses the motor. I recently was able to find a used 1934 Delta 14-inch bandsaw that is in need of repair. It works. It works fine. Everything tracks true, but I was like, well, since I got to take it apart to transport it, and I brought it back here, and I was like, well, it's already apart. I might as well go down the rabbit hole and restore it. So in the middle of restoration now, you can see the parts down here, the frame, and then the wheels are there. And I'm sitting on the motor housing. Okay, so this, let's go back before we get to this is the Harbor Freight, what is this, 3-inch 3-inch clear polyester swivel caster with brake, which is that's what I have on the bandsaw. It's a perfectly fine caster for light duty. Now this says it'll have 200-pound capacity. I don't know if I would want to put 200-pound capacity on it, but it's a locking caster. So when you press down on the lock, it puts this little cutting thing here and locks it down, but it's actually really difficult to engage. And when you engage it, it only stops the wheel. It does not stop the swivel, right? Now this one from Wood River, which is 4 times as expensive, like $12 or $13 versus $3. This is what they call double locking casters. So they have this little pad here that grips the wheel. So when you lock, and it swivels, right? So when you lock it down, and it's much easier. I'm just putting a little bit of pressure. So it's a lot easier to work. And now it doesn't. Once it locks in, there's no swiveling because it also locks this, which is really great because let's say I'm using my bandsaw, which is, or let's say I'm using like the table saw, which I'm putting a little bit more force through. So this is the table saw here, right? I got the SawStop CTS. I have the same type of casters on the bottom of that one. And once I lock those in and the swivels lock together, then the bandsaw cart doesn't move. And what I can do is then I can then position the casters in different directions to help kind of lock that in place, right? And you know, sometimes you've had these situations if you've ever used carts where even though the wheels are locked, but if they're still, if the swivel isn't locked and you're, you know, pushing weight on it, it will slide around as the wheel pivots. This lock or this double locking swivel prevents that from happening. Now, why are we saying that? Because I'm just trying to give you the basic idea of how we're building these carts. But in this case, for the new, what I'm building are carts for sanders. Basically, I've got this rigid oscillating belt sander right over there, the orange one. So this particular cart that I'm going to show you today is not necessarily for this particular sander. This is a fine sander for small use. I actually have this Ryobi 4x36 belt sander here. The cart that's going to go on it will house that sander, and and I've been using it on with this, like, you know, old school 1980s era printer cart. So I have side access to all of the Festool sandpapers, or all the sandpapers that I have, and so I think I'm going to recreate that, but in something that's a little bit more designed for what I'm doing rather than a repurposed printer cart. And then I don't know if maybe the local, we have a vintage computing store, museum here, and I wonder if they might be interested in that. I really hate to throw stuff away because it's like, it's still a potentially viable piece of office equipment. It just needs someone to use it. Okay, so back to what I'm saying. We've got our basic cart, but instead of having it open like it is here, like it's open on the ends, we're going to put the panels on the end and leave it open on the sides, so that the broad side, the 620 millimeter side, will be the side that's open, and then we'll access it that way. So, and then what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about the Domino usage to create the mortises so that we can assemble the cart later. There's a couple other design details that I need to figure out as far as the backing. I think I'm going to use this pegboard backing, and then I'm trying to figure out what are the shelf spacing and what kind of shelves. So I would like to build it all as one unit so that the shelves are all located during assembly rather than having adjustable shelves or just tacking them in later. I think it would be a nicer fit that way. But let's go to the Domino. We're going to put you over here. Set you up right there. I think that'll be good. If you have questions, let me know. I will check on them intermittently so that we can, if I can answer any questions you might have, I'd be happy to. All right, so we've got our Domino. This is the Festool Domino. I got this about last summer when Festool had a special that gave you this setup along with a sustainer filled with the tenons that you're going to use for a very nice price. I think it was like $1,300. It was really a great deal. The latest one is their 100th anniversary DF500 Domino that was for like $1,200. That's a good deal on the Domino because it came with a lot of accessories. This was the better deal, 8-10 months ago, because it had this kit and this together. Now, it did not come with one of the cross stops that, well, it did not come with the cross stop, which cost another $87 at the time. So you paid a little bit more for that, but it wasn't a terrible thing. So inside our Domino sustainer, we've got a couple things that we've got to go. We're going to go through. Yeah, I got a whole kit here. So I've got pretty much all the accessories that Festool makes. What we're probably going to be using today is just the Domino. And one thing I also bought was this Crescent, kind of like a pliers wrench or like a water heater wrench. And what it is, it offers this adjustment. Right, so you open up it. So this is really a very affordable tool from Crescent. And I use this mainly for extracting dominoes during dry fitting. So we'll put the dominoes in, dry fit them, and then sometimes they're really tight to get out, so I'll use this to leverage it out. And I just keep this in the Domino kit. This is my Domino wrench. And it can work with pretty much any size domino. It's a fine tool. It does, if you want to compare it to something like the Icon pliers wrench, or even the Doyle wrench, or especially like the Knipex and stuff like that, this is not its equal. It is much lighter weight, a little bit less robust. The tolerances are a little bit looser, meaning that, like, if you look at this, there's a little bit of play here, which you don't see that in the higher end tools. But at the time when I bought this, this was $16. So that's a really difficult, and I'm only using it to pull dominoes. I don't need to wrench down on a water heater valve. The dominoes aren't that robust. The one thing that I do find irritating is that you can set your jaw size, right? But it's designed to clamp down. So once you set your jaw size, there's a lever here that pushes it up to secure it against, to get against each other, which means that it will go all the way up and you lose your setting. You kind of have to go reset it. And I found that to be quite irritating at times. But it's a good deal, as far as what's priced out. And so we got our Domino. There's a little bit of a red tab here that holds the fence in place. We'll take that out. And this is the basic Domino. If you're not too familiar with the Domino DF500, there are two different models. One is the DF100 with 500, which is this one. There's a 700 model that is bigger. The big difference between the two is the size. The other one is very large, and to do the kind of work with that version of the Domino, that this version of the Domino is really masterful at handling, it's a wild, clunky beast. And that's just, I can't imagine that it'll be fun to use the 700 version of this Domino in the manner that you use the 500, meaning that the different tenons, the smaller tenons that on smaller work would be much more difficult with the bigger one. There are adapters that you can use on the DF700 so that you can use the entire range of dominoes that are available, from 4mm all the way up to whatever the largest size of the 700 has. I think that may bring warranty repairs into question. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but it's also just it's just unwieldy. The idea behind the Domino is that you're going to be sizing your tenons to the workpiece, and the smallest is 4mm. So if you're using the rule of thirds that Festool encourages you to use, so let's say it's a rule of thirds, meaning that your domino should be about 1/3 of the size of the material that you are plunging. So if you're using a 4mm domino, the ideal size would be 12mm or 1/2 inch. And if you're working on 1/2 inch boards, which I don't know if there's any around here, and you're trying to manipulate that big machine on a 12-inch board or 12mm board, it becomes very difficult, unwieldy. So this is the better tool for the smaller ones. Now, and a lot of people say, "Oh, let's buy the big one because you can do it all." And that there is some truth to that. But the really big tenons, depending on what you're doing, you may never need to use the very large tenons. So there's, how much value does that really bring to you if you're not going to utilize the tenons that you buy the larger machine for? Now, the other machine, the 700, I think is around $1,700, so it's pretty expensive. This being around 12 to 1300 is not terribly cheap as well. However, I think it's well worth the money. And I've used it on a lot of the shop projects here, not because you need to use Domino, but because I wanted to learn how to use it better. Learn how to use it so that when I finally go to make the other projects that I want to do, I don't muck it up as much. Don't get me wrong, I'm still at a point where I am totally mucking up my Domino usage on a regular basis. For example, I have this chair. This is a chair made from thermal oak. And I've used Dominoes to, oh, this is starting to come out, I think. Oh yeah. There it is. I've been waiting for this joint to fail. And actually, since it is failing, that means I can take it out. Okay, so as you can see, I use Dominoes in this joint. This is a chair that I designed, inspired by the Concordia chair that was designed originally by Mira Nakashima. And I used something called thermal oak to make it. And the thermal oak, it is a strange beast. They're basically taking red oak wood, putting it into a high temperature kiln to about 190 degrees Celsius, and they're essentially what they're doing is they're trying to mimic a lot of the positive properties of yakisugi, which you may have heard as called shosugibai, where they take cedar wood and burn it, and what that does, it creates incredible insect resistance as well as fire resistance and weather resistance. So they heat this, and because my day job is in coffee, and I do part of my job as a coffee roaster. When they were explaining to me the process of taking the wood that's 8 to 10% moisture content down to 4 or 5% through this high temperature heat kiln drying, I was like, oh, you're basically roasting the coffee. And there's so many parallels to that of roasting coffee to what they're doing here. And the problem with this is it does create very good weather resistance, but it also makes it very brittle. So there's a lot of chip outs on the ends of the legs, and it's very dry, so it's very difficult to work with. And using regular PVA glue doesn't work. Like, all the joints now on this chair have failed. These two were redone. So I used Dominoes on the two front legs and then half laps here. And when I was re-gluing these were I re-glued these with polyurethane glue, Gorilla Glue. The Gorilla Glue will hold, although this seems to be separating too. Like, I don't think it is. I think there's just a gap. The problem with this, I've got 10 degree angles on these, and there's no good way that I figured to clamp it. So really, I think in future ones, I'm going to start drilling holes and using hardware fasteners to secure it to the seat. But the reason I wanted to show you this in relation to the Domino is that I put the Domino here, and I basically marked it out, center lined it, and then figured out where what are the two angles for the lines for the legs. And I plotted them out so that the Domino would be centered on the line. And no matter how much I've done this Domino thing and practice with a lot of shop projects, I'm still like maybe 5 millimeters off. Like, it's just a little bit off because I'm measuring it wrong. I'm doing something wrong with the way that I'm figuring it out. And that's all right, because it's not to the point where it's so far off that it's like changing the geometry of the chair. But it is far off enough that, I'm irritated by it. And and the thing is, you just got to adjust to compensate for it. So don't let that bother you too much. Just roll with it, and you can always adjust. So, like, for example, when I talk about adjusting, you'll make mistakes. And this chair has this upper back, and on another version of this chair that I was working on, I was making a new back piece that's like this, much shorter, much stubbier, less support across the back. And I think my critical area is that I should be cutting the mortises with the domino before I start to shape the piece. Because I'll cut out the general piece. Basically, I'll start out like... Where'd it go? There's a piece that I have here that is now missing because the workshop is not as organized as I would like it to be. Where are you, piece? Anyway, the piece that I have another piece that I'm working on that's a similar backing, and I haven't started shaping. I've cut out the rough shape, but I haven't started shaping it, and that's probably the better time to do it. And I think I'm working on the back leg for another one that is being made with this piece here. I've already milled it out and brought it to S3S. Well, actually S2 because I'm going to keep the live edge on this side, which is going to be the spine of the chair, and then of this part we're going to shape. So what I'm planning on doing is I'm going to take the leg, the whole rear leg, mark it out, and then use the leftover space to create to mark out for the backing piece, and then I'm going to plunge the mortises while it's still whole, which gives me more reference surfaces to balance the domino on it. But you know, if you make mistakes, you can repair them. Like what I did here, you can see here, like it's totally mucked up, right? Like you can see there's 3 domino bores happening, and you can see where the domino itself is inside this, and this is actually glued in. So what you can do when you make mistakes like this, you can fill it with the let's say you plunge the domino in the wrong spot. You're like, oh, I totally hosed myself. You can insert the domino, glue it in, cut it off, and then redo it. I've done that. I've had to do that. I did that on one chair. I was like, oh, okay, I totally mucked that up. So there are ways of correcting your mistakes. You can always correct your mistakes in some way. Ultimately, the worst case scenario is that you may have to replace a piece completely, but don't be too afraid of it. And the nice thing about the domino makes it fairly simple to make mortises, and it's so much easier than having to do it by hand. Can I put this back in? For this chair, I think this is my favorite version of it, is the way that I got the heights in. Okay, that'll work for sitting for today. All right, so the domino, if you have questions, let me know. Are there any questions? No. Okay, if you have questions, let me know. Just drop them in the comments, and I will attend to them. So we've got our domino. The domino is a great tool. There's some functionality, there's some controls that you should be aware of. If you've heard of this before from other creators, everything green on a Festool tool does something relatively important. There is the power switch, which means you press this, you turn it on. This particular rotating dial here controls the width of the mortise that you're creating. You can make it very tight by going to this setting here, mid-wide, and then very wide. And what that does, it adds on additional space into them to make the mortise wider. It doesn't make it taller or thicker, it just makes it wider. So that during your alignment of your pieces together, you'll have a little bit more room to get your pieces in. In this particular chair, I think, let's see, I think I put wider ones on here to give me more space. Is that right? Does that look wider to you? Whoops. No, actually, it is just the 10 millimeter. believe I used 10 millimeter by, so 10, these are 10 millimeter thickness by 50 millimeter length dominoes, and that's what I used to put this chair together. Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, there we go. So, oh yeah, you can see it here. This is a better, you can see this one is tight, right? Meaning that it's narrow enough so that there's really no play for the tenon to move back and forth. In this one, it's a little bit larger. You can see the difference. So this one, you can put this, I can put this in very easily, right? Which I can't put in so easily in this one because there is this rib that's right here on the side of it. This rib just gives you more grabbing power. But when you're trying to do dry fitting, this rib kind of gets in your way. So what I used to do is I used to sand down the side of the rib, because Sedge at Festool said that that's what you should do in a video. So you can take that and you can start to sand it, right? So I've got this like old beat up piece of 60 grit sandpaper, and you could just sit there and do this, which will work. And I did this for a long time, especially since I was kind of scared about using hand planes because I'm scared of the blade. But if you have a block plane, and as I got more skill and more, well, less scared, I don't know if more skill, but less scared, you can take the block plane and then you can use that to shave off the rib. So I just kind of take it and pull it and pull and pull and pull until it feels kind of smooth. And I do that on both sides. A little bit more. And, you know, those shavings get here so you feel like, oh, I'm a woodworker and I'm all like fancy, and Paul Sellers is going to call me and tell me, oh, your technique is really great. Now we got it measured down, or we got it, you know, shaved down, and this will now fit in this tighter mortise very simply. And like I said, it gets tight, and this is where the tool, the little Crescent $16, $18 tool fits in. Now, like I said, you have to kind of open it up, and then you just kind of close it down. And this will help you just to give you a little more leverage as you extract the domino out of the mortise. Right, so, okay, so those are the two different, these are the two settings of sizes of mortises. So when you're talking about changing the settings here, that's what you're doing. This one here is the widest. So you get a little bit wider than what you see there. And again, that allows you to, having one tight and one long, or one wide, means that you can insert these and you don't have to be perfectly straight here and you don't have to be perfectly aligned. You can have just a little bit off. And as you insert it, you can start with the tightest one and you'll have space to drop it in to the wider one, like that. Right, and then, of course, you're putting glue and all that on there. All right, that's that. The next green part here is this switch. And what this switch is it controls the depth of your cut, right? So you can see the numbers here, 12, 15, 20, 25, 28 millimeters in depth. So 28 millimeters is just over an inch, maybe inch and a quarter, inch and an eighth. If you want to think that way, I tend not to think about it. I just don't even think too much about the correlation between metric to imperial. I think it becomes a little bit more difficult, or I just don't want to confuse myself. But how you adjust this is that there's a lock lever. So you lift the flap up here, and then you can kind of move it around, and it will control the amount of depth that you are cutting into your mortise, right? And you're kind of matching this up to whatever tenon you're using. So for example, like with this one, 10 millimeters by 50 millimeters long, the theory is that you're putting half into each of your pieces. So you only need to go to 25. You could go to 28 if you want, but you go to 25 and you lock that down, and that will give you 25 millimeters of plunging. So if you're using half on each one, that'll work great. Now, let's say you don't have the depth that you need to go full depth on one of the pieces. You can go less and on one half and go more on the other. So let's say we wanted to do 30, 20. We can go to 28 millimeters, plunge that on the side that has less space. Then we go up to 20 millimeters. Is it 20? No, 20's here. Go to 20, and then plunge that, and that will give us the total 50 millimeter depth. Now you're going to say, oh, you know what? You said 28 and 20, which is only 48, not 50. And even though this is a 50 millimeter domino, it's probably only like 48, 47. It's not going to be the total depth. Because they're leaving space for, you know, glue to squeeze out and all that kind of stuff, so it doesn't blow up your joint or something. It's more, there are better, more knowledgeable woodworkers than I that understand these things. Okay, so if I close it up here, so yes, it's 48.47 millimeters according to my Mitutoyo machinist. You know, whatever this is called. This is actually a measuring device that I got from my machining days many moons ago. So it's a pretty accurate machining measuring tool. So that's the general use. Now, and then the next part of it that's not as critical because I guess it's black, is the height of your fence. So there's a scale here that you can adjust, and there's a lever here that you also adjust. You just unloosen this, and that will allow you to raise your fence. Like so, and then what you're going to do is you're going to use these scales here to choose the thickness of the material that you are plunging into. So if we're doing end grain plunges, we're going to find the thickness here to try to get it as close to center as possible. Now here's the thing, a lot of people obsess about the center of the workpiece with the domino. So much so that I see people like talking about the domino, they're like, oh, you must buy the Seneca Woodworks Imperial version of this, because you can actually take this out somehow, right? I've never taken it out, so I don't know. But I would presume you'll pull this out and then replace it with the Seneca version, which is an Imperial. And what that does, it does reference the center of the Imperial measurement. So if you've got 3/4 inch plywood, you'll set at the 3/4 inch, lock this down, and then theoretically the center of the mortise will now be in the center of a 3/4 inch plywood piece, or a 3/4 inch workpiece. That's really not so important, because with the domino, what you want to make sure that you're doing your reference faces all the same way, so that then they will be aligned. So let me show you this. This is part of the project. Whoops. This is part of the project we're working on now. This is going to be the top of the project. And what I did here is these are, I guess, 3/4 inch pieces of pine that have been planed down and resurfaced. I put them all. These are just remnant scrap pieces of wood that I haven't thrown out, and I was thinking, I need to make this top. Do I want to go out and spend money to buy 3/4 inch plywood? Not really. It's very expensive. But I've got all these pieces here. How can I utilize them? So I figured, let's put them all together as a puzzle. So I replaned, I jointed everything and planed it and got it all cleaned up to try to joint nicely, both as long grain and end grain. As you can see, there's a slight bow to it now because it's sitting around. That has me a little bit distressed. The bottom is planed a bit. This I hand planed, tried to hand plane it to bring it to evenness. Now here's the key is that if you look at this side, this is just sanded. There's been no planing on this side after assembly. On this side, the pieces, if you look really closely, now you can see the marks here from the hand planing, right? I started hand planing because there's like this piece was like maybe 1/8 of an inch higher. This was like a 1/16 of an inch higher than this piece. So they weren't perfectly they weren't all the same thickness, and I wanted to thickness them the same, or close enough. This being the underside, I wasn't too worried about it, but it is bowed now, so now I'm kind of upset about that. I guess I won't worry too much about it. It's the problem with sitting around in a summertime humidity. I probably should put some kind of cowls across them to kind of, well, we'll cover that. But the key is here is that this is all pretty smooth. It's all pretty, there's a slight, I could probably plane that a little bit to get it perfectly smooth, but it's very smooth. The reason it's very smooth is because I use this side of each board as the reference faces for the domino fence, right? So when I was setting this up, I think we set it to 20 mil, let's say 20 millimeters, whatever it is at the moment. And I'm using each of this side, this side of each board as the reference point to lay the fence on top of the piece so that I could drill the mortises. Regardless of the thickness of the board and the thickness that you've set here, so long as you're not plunging below the board or damaging the board. As long as you're using the same reference sides for each of the pieces and joining them together, they will be flatly, they will connect together flat. It'll be like this. It's really impressive. So even though, like, let's say this is 3/4 inch or 18 millimeters, I don't have to necessarily be too concerned that the mortise itself is at 19 millimeters or at 9 millimeters. It could be 4 millimeters below the surface. It doesn't matter as long as all the reference that you use the fence on the same surfaces that you want. Now, if I did this and if I put them to, if I did this one and did this one on separate sides somehow, whatever, then it would be uneven. You would have that problem with unevenness. However, if you do it like a boss, you will not have that problem. And that's what we've done here. Now, that's all done and jointed, and I've gotten it dirty. I probably should resand this. And this is the instability of the wood, is that it's all like, Next time I'll pay more attention to the end grains. And the same thing for the bottom piece. This is the bottom piece of the cabinet. This is all using all different types of plywood. So here we've used the same reference faces, right, with the fence on these top surfaces. So they're all very flush, even though they're very different in size and composition. And if we look down here at the bottom, the underside, you can see here that, man, they do not match at all. Like this whole 2 strips of like whatever's here in the center is thinner than this, like dramatically thin. Look how dramatically thin that is, right? But here, flat. Now we did sand this last week on the live stream, and so it is nice and flat here, but it's very, very off. Now I'm not too worried about it because when I finally attach the casters to this, it's going to be in places where there is even thickness across the entire space. So even though this, like, is a little channel in the middle, I don't really worry about that. And it's not necessarily structural, I think. I could be wrong. Like I said, I'm not really a very well experienced woodworker. And I did split it. I did totally muck it up here. You can see there's a split right here in the wood between the 2 pieces. Mainly because I did not do a very good job squaring this joint while assembly. So when I clamped, I decided that it wasn't coming together. It was a little bit off this way, but I wanted this longer piece to be the more true. So I just clamped this harder to force it that way, and then it split this. Because I actually did these 2 as glue-ups prior to assembling the entire thing, and I only waited like maybe 45 minutes before joining the entire thing, so this still hadn't fully seated, which is fine because what I wanted is this to be the tighter seam for them all. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to join or plunge the mortises for the panels. And I've got, these are the side panels. So the side panels are going to go like this. Right, they're going to go like this and come together. And we're going to go over how to put that together. First of all, we want to figure out what side do we want to use for the exterior of the board, right? Like, what is the side that's going to show to the world? Let's get this top out of here. Should this be the interior face, or this? Oh, this should be the exterior face. This is all one piece. The interior face has a little bit of split in the lamination. The boards for this I actually got from my local Woodcraft. Very happy that my local Woodcraft is all about, like, hey, go take, there's some pallets outside, you can take whatever you want. And so I saw this pallet that was mostly made of plywood, and I was like, oh, there's plywood. Let me grab it, toss it in the back of the truck, and drove away. So we're going to use this as the exterior piece. These need to be surfaced. I probably need to sand them down and make them look nicer before final assembly. And again, we have the same thing. These have the two jointed pieces here. And this one, oh, see, this is not necessarily better, and it also is a little bit bowed. Oh, is that right? And so it's got a split here and a split here. Which is the prettier side in a vertical orientation? I'm thinking that this is going to be less visible if we did it vertically, right? So now we're going to decide. So I'm going to put this part here as a little bit of a protrusion in the finish, right? You can see just a little bit popping up. So with this one, we're going to put this at the bottom. So let's decide. Okay, I'm going to take this, put this down. This is the bottom piece. This is now going, and so you can see here, there's these two pieces here are actually the support pieces from a Harbor Freight moving cart, right? You know those little moving dollies that you get from Harbor Freight with the black wheels? Well, one day I decided that I wanted to make a shop cart to hold my tools. And, you know, if you buy the small dolly, that small dolly is only $13 or something like that. So super, super affordable. And if I bought the casters from like Woodcraft, I'm going to spend $45 on casters for a tool cart. And I was like, well, I don't want to do that. That's kind of expensive. Let me buy this $12 one, and I use them here on my tool cart. I've got a tool cart inspired by this guy on YouTube that worked for Colonial Williamsburg. So I used some of the cross members and the cheaper casters and put them on there. And I still had those pieces of remnant plywood left from the dolly, and I just used them in this. Right? That's where they ended up. That's why there's holes for the casters, and the way that it was cut, this one has the holes here. So this is going to be the back. This will ultimately be the back of the piece, and this side, which has the cleaner edge, will be the front. And if we're going to reference this that way, this is the longer piece, so this can be to the back and be less obtrusive. It's going to come together like this. We're going to put it together like a lot of what do you call it? Like a lot of the cabinet makers do. The cabinet makers put the sides, or they put the flats in the sides, right? Which actually will make this slightly longer, because I think this is 620. So by adding another, 36 millimeters, so it'll actually be 650 millimeters in width. The reason that I'm going to be off in my 620 is because I've been thinking about, I've designed these dimensions basically with the pieces on the side, and now that I've changed it, then it's going to be accessible this way Yes, this is 620. Yeah, 18. So 656 millimeters will be the total depth, which is not really that much of a difference. Like, I'm not too worried about it. So we've got a little bit of a difference here. We've got our, oh, it's a little bit wider by slightly. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to mark our reference surfaces. And some of the things we want to keep in mind is, what is our reference surface? Our reference surface is going to be on the show side for the bottom piece. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an R right here and an R here, because this is the front. Right, this is the front. And you can write as much as you want. I mean, it's all right. You can always erase it or sand it off. And then eventually we're going to put some kind of coating or finish on it, so it'll kind of hide it if necessary. But this lets us know that we're going to use this as our references. And we'll actually put that arrow here just to remind us that that's what we're going to do. Then on this piece, we're going to use this as our reference, the inside corner. And I'm going to put up that way. Reference here. All right. I think that's going to give us what we need to know, to remember, at least, for our plunging. Now let's make sure we got everything set correctly here. We're going to take our domino and make sure that we are set for our work. We're going to remove the fence by taking our little crescent wrench. Unlock that, and there's this sound that when you pull the domino apart that all the domino owners seem to love. People love that. And as you can see here, we've got a small cutter on here. This is the 4mm cutter. We could use it, but it won't be very. We can use it. It's going to be rather weak, because it's nice to have a little bit of strength in order to do the joints. Now, in order to change it, there's a little locking here for the arbor. So you just kind of rotate around until it locks in place and drops in. So you drop that in, you hold it, and then you take your wrench and put it on here, and then you just twist it and break that hold. Take that off. Now, if we're using 18mm stock, the idea is to use 1/3 of that, which is 6mm. However, let's see. Let's get into our kit. 4x20. This is our 5x30 supply, and this is our 6x40. Oh, that's a little bit too much. 6x40, forget that. All right, we're gonna go by 5x30. Which means we're going to need the 5mm domino. And the 5mm bit is what comes with your domino. So you don't need to, this is what comes with it, so it's nice in that respect. If you buy the box set that has all the tenons, it will give you all the it'll give you a set of 5 cutters, or 4 cutters, to go along with that, which is actually a very good value, because the cutters themselves, I think, range from like $60 to $80 a piece. So you get all of them for this domino, and I think with a bunch of tenons for all the sizes for like $300 or something like that, if you bought it at the normal price. Now we just pre-collect it all together, and it just locks in place, and we're good to go. We need our pliers, wrench here. Let's put the box away. So if you have questions about what we're doing, dominoing, let me know, because I'm happy to talk about something. Okay, so we've marked our reference spots here. What we're going to do is we're going to plunge this way into our surface. And we're using the corners as references because on your Festool Domino, they have, on the DF500, there are these paddles. These paddles are 37 millimeters from the center of your mortising bit. Why 37 millimeters? I have no idea. What does it mean? I don't know. But it's just that it's a measured amount that you can use to set your measurements. Oh, another thing we want to do is we want to this is what I forgot to do. This is our piece. This is our piece. Yeah, this is the inside piece. I'm going to put that here inside. Oh yeah, okay. That's fine. Now let's come around this way. And I'm going to bring you guys around. I think it'll be easier to see from this other angle what I'm doing now. Okay, what we know here is that we know that we're going to use the paddles to reference off the edges because these are absolute. So we can go 37 millimeters in on both sides. And then we can pick maybe 2 more spots to drop mortises. Oh, and see, here's part of the problem. We have to make sure that we're getting this reference correctly because there's, as you can see, there's a slight variation in the, oh, there's not perfect. That's very distressing. So what we're going to do is we're not going to use the back as a reference point anymore. We're just going to use this front, and that's part of the reason we want to make sure we check and match up what we're doing to see. All right, that's going to be our match point. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp this down so that we have very solid references. So I'm going to grab an MTHZ80 clamp. So I'm going to put it over here. That way we can, it should give us enough space. All right, good there. Okay, that should lock us down. Now, we've got 18, is it 18 millimeters? Was that correct? Let's double check our thicknesses. For this piece, we're going to be 18 millimeters, right? Oh, no. See, this is actually 14 millimeters. So what we're going to do is we're going to set our there's a setting here for 15 millimeters. A little bit hard to see, but right in there is this 15 millimeters. We're going to set it for that. Lock that down. And that will mean that we've got now, oh no, see, this is, I'm not giving enough space, am I? That's 14. This is, oh yeah, see, this is where you want to be a little bit more careful. So we have 18 millimeters. This is 14 millimeters. Oh, see, I did this reversed. All right, let's just do it. First of all, let's do it. We're using this as the reference. And then now we're going to need a couple more spots. So we want one here for sure. Strike a line there. And then maybe, you know what, we probably can get away with just one more. An economy of dominoes. Now, I'm not worried about being precise on these because we've got a lot of play to work with. So now this one, we're plunging this way. And we're using these reference markers because we just want to be able to, line everything up correctly as we go. So now we can use this to, let's open that, lock that in. And that's going to give us a nice reference there. So lock there, plunge it in, line this up here, plunge that in, and then here we're going to line this last line up and plunge that. And that should give us exactly what we want. Now we want to make sure that we are getting all of our stuff set up. So before you, first thing you want to do is take your hose, and we'll attach the hose to the domino, then the power cable. Now for the first cut, which is the reference point that we're doing here, we want to make sure that we have it on our tightest setting. Right now we're on the middle setting. So instead of having to worry about changing it, I can plunge this first and then work our way back. As always, make sure you have good PPE. Like for this, I like hearing protection and glasses. The suction is actually very good on the Festool Domino when you're using it with the CT extractor, so I don't worry too much about it. What you do want to do is check your suction to make sure it's at full blast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it on using the remote control here and make sure the setting is at full. If it's not full, I'm going to adjust it. It's full. We are good to go. And now we're going to align this here. See if we can get you to see that better. Hopefully that'll work. I'm going to align the center line here on the scale with the red line that I marked. And then plunge. Oh, and also we're using 30 millimeter dominoes. We also want to be set to 15 millimeters here, so a little bit deep. 12, 15, okay. Great. All right, let's begin. Some of the things you want to consider is just by turning it on, by pushing this. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Turn it on. Nope. And by pushing here. So I've got a nice long mortise made. Very nice. Something you want to consider is as you're plunging, take your time. Don't force it in. Don't jam it in there. Take your time. Finesse is what it's all about, right? Let the tool do the work for you without having to jam it. If you start to hear like it getting chattering or straining, then you're pushing too much. So don't push too much. Just take it easy. Again, we're going to line it back up with the other line, turn it back on, and then plunge. Now you may have noticed I'm holding it here on the back of the tool while turning it on here, a lot of times you may be, maybe you may be tempted to hold it like this and push. One of the problems by holding it in other positions that you might actually put a little bit leverage on down and lift the fence, so you start to get your registration starts to get off. So if by holding it back here, you're really more supporting it, right? Like I can keep it flat this way. You're really more supporting it rather than holding it here where you're trying to find a leverage point, right? So if you do that, it's going to make your results a lot better, a lot easier. And then finally, we've done our 2 wide mortises. Now we're going to our final one. We're going to go tight. So what I'm going to do is once I turn it on, I'm going to change the switch. Don't change your settings with the tool off, because something about the way they designed the gearing that you can switch it and turn it on, and many people have had it be fine, but there's the chance that by doing that, the gears don't mesh correctly and it grinds and crunches, and then could lead you to premature tool failure and other problems, which would be unfortunate, especially for a tool you've invested quite a lot in. It's just a little bit of easy preventive maintenance to do, and it doesn't really take too much. All right, let's give it a try. And again, this time we were using our lines. You notice there's no lines here. We're just going to use the paddles, this paddle here, and I'm going to put it in the corner. I'm putting it on here, sliding it over till it stops, then turning it in, and then plunging. And I'm actually going to give light pressure in this direction from my hand, so just to keep it as a tight reference in the corner. All right, let's continue. So turn it on. Okay, now we've got the 3 mortises drilled, and you can see them here. Right, we've got the wide, and narrow, the tightest narrow. So this is, like we marked here, the R. Since this is the front, we're going to join everything this way first and then bring it in when we finally finish all of our cuts. Now, here we want to make sure that we've done it correctly. This is the inside, the reference side. What am I doing? I totally mucked that up, didn't I? Since this is the outside, I marked here. What I need to do is I need to transfer these lines now to the inside faces. So let's go do that. See, like I said, no matter how much I've been doing this domino thing, I need to go slowly and rethink everything as we go, because I'll still make mistakes, still making mistakes, despite using this for quite a while. So here we're gonna, I also need glasses for better detail. So here, put that on there. With the wide setting, it can be a little bit off. Okay, that's good. This one we can pull out. And then we're going to mark that up. Okay, now we've got our, and the important thing is that this is the inside, right? We marked that this is on the it says inside. Here's to remember that it's on the inside, and now we need to plunge down into these positions. So what we're going to set this up here, make sure it's off the side of your workbench. Use the clamps to lock it in place, and we're going to need another accessory, because now we're going to do a vertical plunge, right? And do we need to consider, oh, here's a, here's a potential problem. We have been referencing, okay, we're talking two different thicknesses, 14 millimeter thick, which means that we're going to plunge through with a 15 millimeter depth. Okay, that's not a big problem. It's not a big deal. Even if we get through, if we plunge through the piece, then we'll be able to do through mortise tenons, right? Which kind of is a pretty detail factor. So now that we're going to plunge down vertical, one of the other problems we have now is that we could get a little bit, wobbly. So we don't want to wobble. We want to put another accessory that's available from the Festool Domino, one of their fences that you add onto it for vertical plunging. Now, where is it? And now this. Now, years ago when the Domino first came out, they had a version of this that was smaller. That I finally got to see recently. I was like, oh, that is really small and maybe difficult to use. So TSO Products came out with something called the Bigfoot that's bigger than this. And a lot of people recommend that. But I have yet to find a situation where I've actually needed something bigger than this particular stock OEM one than to get the TSO Bigfoot, which is kind of $100 or something. So we're going to close this fence for the moment, put it up here on a flat piece of a panel, and then just put it up here that everything registers really well. And what we're just using this surface. Actually, let's do it over here because I think the workbench is flatter than that. So here, make sure that's all down, and then we just screw it all in. And that's going to give us a nice flat reference face for the Domino, right, like that. And then we're going to put the fence back down to our setting. That's going to give us our proper depth. Gosh, I hope so. I'm thinking about it now, and I'm not 100% sure even. And since we run the tightest setting already, we're going to start with the tightest mortise, which again, we're using the same reference face so that the two mortises that are tightest match. And that will allow us to put these in, and then if these are a little bit off, that'll be all right. So again, we're going to lock in our... Actually, I should put my headphones, ear protection on. The ear protection, it's actually kind of a loud tool, so I like the ear protection. So we're going to lock in the paddle, like we did last time, and square it up together. And now I like to hold it like this, right? This is more like Sedge training, Festool Sedge, right? He says to hold it like this, and you kind of give it some pressure. But one thing you want to be careful, don't stick your fingers in here. That's where the cutter is. And then for this, we're going to pinch. Oh yeah. Now you can see here that it has gone all the way through. I don't know if you can see that, but it has all gone all the way through, which is, if you don't want to do that, that's a problem. But here, I'm not too concerned about it. It could be a nice little feature detail, but also in this case, it is a shop project. So if it's a little bit through tenon, I'm not too worried about it. Let's try this one now. This one now, we've got our line up here. So we're going to line that up with this line here on our fence. And we can also use the reference. There's a point here, right there, that we can use to line this line with, right? So that'll give us total alignment. And then again, we're going to use the same technique for turning it on. And this time we're going to go back to the middle setting for the tenons to create a little bit of a wider mortise. Now, one thing I should note, you don't necessarily have to do that. I like to do that just to give me more fudge room. But if you have the fudge room on the other side of the other piece, you could make all of these tight and it should still work. All right, let's do it again. All right, very nice. We've got our slot here. And now let's move on to the last one. Now you might have been wondering, like, since we're using the paddles to reference off of here, why did we not use the paddles to reference off of here? Because the reason I didn't do that is that, now I forgot which one, but the two pieces where we're joining are not exactly the same width. I think this one's a little bit longer or wider. So because of that, if I was to do the 37 millimeters off of this corner, we would be however much off we are. So by striking a line here that matches the line that's on the bottom piece, this will give us proper alignment. And oh, you know what? Am I cutting this correctly? Oh yeah. That will give us proper alignment and we'll still have this piece offset by however much it may have been. Which then now gives me the ability to trim this off with the table saw or whatever to make it match completely later. All right, now we're just going to line it up together again, like we did last time, and then do the plunge with the medium setting. All right, there we go. Now the through mortises are done. Now I told you, I could have easily told you that, oh, you know what, the through mortises were a design detail that I included into the overall design, but it's not. It was this is just a muck-up, a simple muck-up that we make. And sometimes you're going to make muck-ups as you go along, and you can figure out how to change it. In this particular case, I'm going to finish it like the other cases. For example, this one here. Well, let me take this off of here so it's easier. Our bandsaw cardigan, our example, you can see here that there are a lot of muck-ups on it, right? Like, you can see there's a domino here. Why is this domino here? Because I totally mucked it up. And why is it that there looks like there's two different pieces? Because I totally mucked it up. What happened was that I measured them incorrectly, so that when I assembled it on the joining stage, and you know, I didn't really do a dry fit, I just kind of put it all together. And this is one of the problems. I cut this panel not as high as this panel. So the difference, you can see that how the grain runs differently with this little insert piece. There's an insert piece of plywood. It was that far off in my measurements in cutting that when I assembled them, the whole thing was canted over, and I was like, what is going on there? And luckily, I did it. You know, I noticed it during the. Oh, did I? No, I noticed it after the glue up. So I had to take this whole thing that was fully dried, fully cured, put the track saw on it, and cut it up. I just cut this down, cut this out here, and then on the table saw, I cut this little piece of plywood out from another piece of plywood, dominoed, you know, put it all in. I don't know if I dominoed or glued or whatever, but then just put it all together. And then since I'm staining it blue, you got to look closely to notice it. So again, these are different things that are going to happen to doing your projects. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to make errors. And that's why I like using shop projects to do these things, to learn. Like, for example, the first shop project I really did was this cart design for my rigid shop vac. Now the general shape of it, the idea of it comes from a video that I saw from MWA Woodworks. And I used all reclaimed wood from pallets, and I think this may be a piece of pine, but most of it's oak pallets. And I didn't really have joinery tools or finishing tools, so it's all kind of messed up. Like, if you were to see this in the raw wood state, like, it was ugly as all heck, right? There's screws in it to put it together. There's dominoes somewhere in here. Like, it is all kind of, like, here, look. Here's a domino through mortise. through mortise. Why are they through mortise? Is because I totally made a mistake. I totally screwed up the calculations. Here, the domino, I referenced it completely wrong, so that's why there's a plunge here on the surface. This one, I didn't measure the pieces correctly, so there's actually a domino mortise here, but there's no domino here because this one doesn't finish the same way. So there's a lot of things you can make and do with your shop projects and totally muck it up. But if I don't point this out to you, I don't think most people would never notice that came to visit or whatever, or just saw it on a picture. You'd never really notice these errors because, you know, I like using the colors to kind of hide it. Like the colors hide all the mistakes. But if I left it like raw wood, like a lot of people leave their shop projects raw wood, you can, I think that highlights it more. So feel free to experiment and play around with different materials and joinery techniques as well as finishes. Like each of the finishes that I did, like this cart was strictly General Finishes stain that I blended together into a blue-black formula. That one has Osmo Poly X on the top and the stain. The cart has reclaimed wood from oak, reclaimed oak from pallets. I can't remember what finish, but I'm using all the different finishes that are out there. Some are, you know, I've used Poly X. What else we do? Most recently, I've been using this sample from Sutherland Wells. They're botanicals, right? And, you know, by using different, you know, going out to the wood shop and buying small, or wood supply and buying small quantities of finishes, you can try different finishes over here. Like, for example, I was trying to collect a little bit of samples that I was making. So I've got this little collection of palette white oak. Like this one here is board oil from Howard, just on the white oak, so just board oil. This one is Howard Restore a Finish Mahogany Finish on the white oak. This one's Tried and True Original on the white oak, so Tried and True. Oh yeah, Tried and True. I've used Tried and True quite a bit. Tried and True is on the bandsaw cart. And then like this one, Osmo Poly X. I haven't used the Rubio, whatever, the Rubio monocoat. I know that's the YouTuber favorite but my local woodcraft doesn't sell Rubio, so I've never tried it. And I'll be honest, I'm a little bit reluctant to try Rubio only because, you know, you see all the YouTubers use it and I'm like, how good is it? But you know, having the Sutherland Wells is really nice. What I really like is the tongue oil. So I use that on some projects, like some of the chairs that I made were just 100% tongue oil. Mainly, I got that idea from reading about George Nakashima, who's all about the tongue oil. And I tried it on a walnut table, and it was really, really nice because the way, like it went on whatever, and you wipe it, you put it on pretty heavy, you wipe it off, and then you wait like 10 days before doing another coating. But even the first time that I used it, the way that the depth of the grain of the wood, of the walnut that I was using, the way that it developed in those 10 days, I was like, wow, that's really, really deep and really impressive, really amazing. I really like the way that it looks. However, the problem with the tongue is that it takes a long time. So it takes a long time, and, you know, if you need to do 4 coats, it's going to take you 4 weeks to 40 days to truly finish. Whereas something like the Sutherland Wells or these other products, they'll be done, you know, Sutherland Wells, the botanicals, it's a polymerized tongue oil. So it gives a fairly nice looking finish, but it's ready to second coat in 24 hours, which is a great time save. And if you're under that pressure, it is. And then there's other finishes like that I really like. Sam Seal is a floor sealer that we've used in flooring applications that has worked really, really well. And I use those in our coffee shops on pine floors that were 100 years old. We would recoat those every 2 years. I mean, we were a very high traffic place, so that worked really well. Another thing that I've used in the past that I really like is water locks. We used that on a coffee bar setup for the top. We made a Poddock bar top, and that was like some of the hardest wearing coatings I've ever seen. Like we could leave water on it and hot water and nothing ever seemed to cloud it. So really, really nice hard finish. but the point is really not that one of those is the best or one of those is the ones that you should use. It's more a question of taking the opportunity to use your shop projects to try different finishes, to try different assembly methods. Years ago I used a lot of Craig. I used this little Craig jig to make pocket hole joints. But you watch YouTube videos now, and you're like, everybody does pocket hole joints, and you're like, well, I don't want to do pocket hole joints. Like that's not real woodworking, or whatever you want to think about it. And I'm one of those people. But I was like, but there's a right time for every application. And when I was building the wood cart, I decided to build a wood cart to store wood. And I have, as you can see here, it's wood it holds the excess wood. And right now the sander's on top. It's got a pine like top that I got from another woodworker who sold me a piece of equipment, and I decided to preserve the wear of it. Right, it's kind of worn here, the original edge. I did plane it down and refinish it, and put dog holes in it. But in this case, I decided, you know what? I don't necessarily need to do dominoes. I've been doing dominoes for a long time. Let me use screws, and let me use pocket screws. So there's a bunch of pocket holes joinery here and here, and throughout the frame. And I took 2x4s from leftover pine lumber that's just sitting around, and I resurfaced them and put it all together. So it's not like, and part of that was also to go back and explore again more with the pocket hole joinery and see, because the way that I was going to assemble it, the way that I was building it, it became very complex. And when you do domino joinery, you really have to think very, very far ahead of how you're going to assemble it, so that you can figure out which pieces come together first before you join the other pieces. This one I was kind of doing really heavily on the fly, like I was just making it up as we went along. And some parts were dominoed together, I think, but then a lot of it was just pocket hole jointed because the pocket hole made it easier to do. And I've done pocket holes for other things, like assembling some of the chairs for the panel glue ups. Used pocket holes to pull them together because the shapes were so odd that I just kind of thought, well, let's just pocket hole them together. The screws will hold the panels together. And when they're done, pull the screws out, and we're clear of any kind of hardware being in the wood. So those are okay. So that's some basic thoughts here on our WoodShop Live. So I showed you how to do the domino mortises. And that's just a basic way of doing the domino mortising. It's not a very, it's not too technically difficult. It's really a lot about attention to detail, paying attention to what surfaces you're using as your reference points, how those pieces are going to go together, where do you want the joints to be. Make sure you're double checking your markings, checking your machine settings to make sure your depths and heights of the fence are correct. Once you really start to feel the groove of that, it really becomes a lot easier. And then you'll be like me, you second guess yourself sometimes. You're like, oh, I don't know if I did that correctly. Did I use the right faces? I don't know. Maybe we'll find out. But just take the time, and there's a lot of things to learn. Like, even as I watch more videos by other creators that are making domino videos, there's still a lot of details to learn, like in how to figure out how to place, like on these chairs, I'm trying to place the domino freehand into very specific locations without using jigs, right? Because every seat top is actually different in size. Like, it's not all standardized yet. So it's very interesting in that respect. All right, so that's pretty much it for today's WoodShop Live. Good to see all of you. Thank you very much for hanging out and tuning in. I hope this kind of brought some helpful and informative information for you with the domino and perhaps starting your own shop projects. I really encourage you to do your shop projects and maybe take them a little more seriously as ways to improve your skills, because a lot of people, I think, will think about, I'm going to make, whatever I want to make, and I just need to make this bench or this cart, and that doesn't really matter. And it really does. It really does, because that's part of your skill set. And by taking your time making nice shop projects and giving some attention, a little bit of forethought, a little bit of thinking, a little bit of effort for it, it will only help you make better woodworking as you progress forward. All right, so I guess that's it for today. Thank you very much for hanging out with me. We'll be back again with another WoodShop Live at some point. So until then, have a great one.